U.S. Attorney Jonathan Fahey and former acting chief of the FBI's International Corruption Unit, Ren McEachran. Great to have you gentlemen back with us and in person this time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for doing it. Okay, so this is what Jonathan Turley, Professor Turley, tweeted today. Having read the redacted affidavit, it leaves most questions unanswered. It also raises further doubt over the court's acceptance that the DOJ found the Goldilocks point of getting this just right, meaning the redactions. The DOJ released what was largely already leaked or known. Jonathan, what do you make of what we saw today?
You know, it certainly doesn't seem like the Attorney General is sticking with his commitment to be transparent in this investigation, because we know they opposed releasing anything whatsoever, and they really didn't release anything meaningful that really sheds very much light on this case, other than I think we still know what we knew at the beginning, which is this is really a dispute between the former president and the National Archives about what he's allowed to keep and what he's not. And I think to read more into that, I don't think there's any information to show that there's more to it than that. And it is, you know, interesting when they fought so hard to keep this sealed, and yet they're still leaking. And I think you pointed out on a segment earlier today, and that's a real problem. And you know, and the reasons for keeping it sealed, you know, don't seem to make sense, and it's certainly not consistent with transparency, which the Attorney General pledged to be.
He has. And after things that have gone on with the intel community the last few years, a lot of people want that. They want to know more. They want to see more. There's a lot redacted, though, that we don't know. This is what the Speaker of the House said today. Her take on what we know so far.
The fact that the president would have these documents really needs attention. We are really risking the safety of our intelligence gatherers around the world, and who will cooperate with us if they think that somebody could do a rogue action and take these documents and who knows do what with them.
So, Ren, it almost seems like this redacted affidavit is a bit of a Rorschach test, whether you are a president's fan or critic, depending on what you read, what we know so far. But what do you make of what the Speaker said?
Yeah, she's concerned about the classified material. I get that. But this is really, to Jonathan's point, a dispute about classified materials in a safe place controlled by the Secret Service, multiple locks. The DOJ and the FBI had been there previously. They'd checked the location. They made some recommendations. Sounds like they followed through those recommendations, and then there was some cooperation going on. So a lot of it is still really puzzling.
So is there a chance in what we don't know that there really is something more than just a document dispute? Because if so, a lot of people are going to think that raid was overkill.
Yeah. There is that chance, and we have basically a full affidavit that's blacked out, so none of us really know. So we're really, you know, we are all speculating, but there's nothing. The DOJ's been selectively leaking material, certainly to further their narrative and try to further this narrative that it's not political. So if there's more to it, it would be odd that they didn't leak other stuff that's favorable to them or favorable to the case being larger than a document dispute. So that would make me think there probably isn't that much more to this. But again, we don't really know, and you know, this didn't really help anyone get any clearer. And I really think it further undermines the credibility of the Justice Department, which, you know, just a year ago, right before an election, they were political on the school board issue. This year, the biggest liability for the Democrats is Joe Biden, and now we're doing something that makes people talk about President Trump. So
we have been talking about this raid for a couple of weeks now, 2-3 weeks. Okay, so Andrew Weissman, an attorney who was part of the Mueller prosecution team or investigator there, he said this. He says the release of the redacted affidavit provides further clarity on why Attorney General Merrick Garland took the extraordinary step of approving the search of certain locations at Mar-a-Lago. The short version is that nothing else had worked and top secret information was at stake. He's clearly a critic of the president, but Ren, he says it lays out the timeline, the back and forth of the documents, the government feeling like it wasn't getting the real story, wasn't getting the runaround. He says the affidavit makes the case.
Well, I don't agree with that. I mean, there was cooperation. What we saw actually in the affidavit was there's a lot of back and forth communication. We knew they received some more documents. They went through those documents. They probably compared that to what they thought had left the White House from Mar-a-Lago at the beginning when he left at the end of his presidency. So I disagree with that assessment. I think it's easy to say, oh, like they found classified, that's it. It's an open and shut case. But I think because there's so much redaction, there's still a lot of questions here about really what's going on.
One of the things we did see was on page 2 of the affidavit. It said there's also probable cause to believe that evidence of obstruction will be found at the premises, meaning Mar-a-Lago, Jonathan.
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of that, and maybe there's something in the affidavit that supports that, but it seems to me that's sort of part of the reason that they used to get this search warrant is to say, well, we need to get this now because they'll obstruct justice, they'll destroy evidence, so we need to do this really drastic action. The problem with that is, if President Trump wanted to copy these materials or get rid of them or do something nefarious with them, he had 18 months to do so. So that wasn't a realistic concern. Everyone knew they were there. He wasn't trying to hide them. And this isn't a case where he's trying to give them to some foreign entity or anything else. They're in, as Ren said, in a secure location. So, whether or not there's evidence of that, who knows? But that might just be something as a justification to make a judge comfortable issuing a search warrant, and also sealing the search warrant because that was part of their justification for that. Things might be witnesses might be tampered with, things like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's any evidence of that within the affidavit.
Yeah, and they talk about that things were intermixed with magazines and articles and classified things, and they're disputing that there was a secure enough facility for these documents there. So luckily for us, you guys are going to stick around because we want to talk about the next chapter of this. What you think happens? Will there be an indictment of the president? Where do we go from here? Meaning the former president, not the current one in this case. Okay, so Jonathan Wren, thank you very much. Come back in just a minute. We'll talk about phase 2.